Yep.
See, I think the lawsuit issue, like one of my friends in California, he was racing at Glen Helen, and he said he was coming into a turn, really hot, and he said there was a rock, and he said I hit this rock and it unsettled my suspension. I couldn't get it laid over. He went over the berm, and on the other side of the berm, there was a dumpster. They were doing some renovations or something. He hit it head on, broke his neck, broke his leg, broke everything. He was airlifted out. He lived, but I can see something like that. Maybe you have you put the concession stand right behind the biggest jumpers. But I mean, it'd be like playing football, and you're out playing football and the goalpost falls and crushes you. Okay, that to me is a lawsuit. But just because you go up to catch a pass and somebody takes your feet out from under you, you break your neck, to me that's just part of the game.
That's a very good point. That where these lawsuits, where it comes down to is negligence.
Mm-hmm.
And if honestly, I think in our track we have such in my opinion, and we should and probably go through what we do. We have demonstrated a consistent effort and policy to continuously improve safety, train what policies we have, and that's why things are working for us. But certainly we all know tracks where that's not true, and you've just given a great example. And I think that's one of the things that the ski areas have in their advantage is that they all have some kind of policy that they generally follow. Even when people get hurt, which they're going to, it doesn't tie back to negligence. There was a track out there that got sued because of something over a berm, and it was like that. There was multiple injuries there and complaints. So that's when we're really and to me that gets back to that culture.
Well, what about with our track? And this might be kind of a silly name for it, but I know when I worked for an aerospace company one time, we had a safety engineer, somebody that kept an eye on everything to make sure nobody was doing anything crazy that would get anybody hurt. And what if we had something kind of equivalent to that with our track? Do you think that would be helpful? Have someone like you that's been in the sport for a long time just be on your four-wheeler, go around, check everything before the gate drops, make sure there's nothing that you see that stands out that goes, man, I don't know, that's kind of sketchy. We might need to, fix this.
Yeah, actually, Chip, I think that's a fantastic idea. And not only that, it's like you mentioned, you had experience with it. This is a practice that has worked in other areas. And honestly, things that are a lot more dangerous than motocross, like minor,
Sure. Yeah.
So I love that idea. And I think what would be awesome is to take, safety engineer is the perfect title. I was kind of wrap my head around, like, what's a good solution? What would be a suggestion and one of the things, so take that idea and then expand it across multiple tracks, and kind of learn from each other and have this continuous improvement process. Then that group of tracks work directly with an insurance company to start separating yourself from the general track population. Rather than trying to fix them all at once, like, can we fix 5 tracks? Or, the 4 we're talking about, and I don't even know which ones they are, but just say, hey guys, we have an idea, and maybe work with that, and then talk to our insurance agent or I don't know, like, where to start. From my understanding, there's only one underwriter left, so at some point get their ear and say, hey, will you work with us on this? Will you acknowledge the fact that we're putting this effort in?
Right. Yeah, that's, and I think that's the big thing is documenting all that, and then also keeping the stats so that you can actually show that this works. There's been some discussion about what's the proper way to flag. Should a flagger leave his post and try to pick somebody up? Or should a flagger, I know what I think the answer is, and I think I know we all think the answer is, should a flagger not leave his post? And do you have track workers and flaggers, and do you differentiate between those two? And I mean, what do you guys think on that one? Should a flagger leave their post, or should a flagger go help?
It just depends. I mean, if it's, once again, I mean, if you hired some high school kid to come out and be a flagger, he might be, a detriment to the track if he steps out there and is oblivious, to what's going on. But if you have, guys that are racers, or or people that's been trained to go out onto the track, I mean, I think if it's life or limb, to where it's gonna, like a blind jump, and the guy, somebody wrecks on the side of a blind jump, you got to do your job to flag people so they know that that's there. And man, I to me it almost sounds like a 2-man operation. Like you'd have to have a flagger and then a track worker.
Yeah, that's basically it. I agree, Chip. Like those are two completely separate jobs. And then, so I've had a lot of experience with OSHA, and I did OSHA implementations and I was the manager of OSHA for a good sized machine shop for a long time. And one of the things, you have to have policies, you have to follow them every time, no exceptions. And so the only way you can do that, and honestly, the flagger corner worker thing is a pretty simple example. Flagger can never leave its post because that's the policy. They're there for a reason, and the reason is to flag. So if they're gone, now nobody's flagging. And it only takes a second for an instant for a serious injury to happen. So if they leave their post for an instant, now you're not following policy. So then you have to have if you're going to have anybody on the track picking people up, it has to be a different job. They can't be the same job.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I think we're all on the same page with this, but
I mean, that's pretty much our policy, and that's kind of why I was leaving. I thought maybe you'd be in our, kind of heading that up. That's pretty much our policy is flagger does not leave their post, and we have track workers to pick up the people that are down. You just, as the flagger, cannot leave your post, because the first time you do that, you've left, and now you're not warning anybody that's coming up. They don't even know to slow down.
Yeah, so a couple of points is that we do have a policy that's rigid. We have training, and we don't just let anybody flag. We qualify them, and we have great volunteers. And for that reason, look how successful our races have been for injury. But I'll add to that when we had and it's just a perfect example. And in fact, I'll tell you, Chip, when I was talking to that USA Today reporter, I brought up the incident last summer where we had a kid down in the back, and there was radio discussion, and you went down, and I think we even red flagged the race, and you went down, and it turned out the kid wasn't that seriously injured. But the thing is, not only do we have a policy that's in place continuously, we have radio communications so that when an event happens, because, I mean, you have this policy to maintain your safety at all times. And then when an event happens, we had emergency response personnel in place with radio communication to deal with that example. And I just rolled through that example with this USA Today reporter, and he's like, yeah, wow, like that's fantastic. And he relayed to me some examples of other cases at other tracks that he'd investigated. It went the other way, and I'm like, yeah, never happened at our track. That would not happen. Yeah. We have, to me, and I didn't really think about it that hard until this winter, but we have this stuff that I'm accustomed to, which is the day-to-day, everything's safe, policies in place, people trained. But we also have in place this emergency response system between, you're in the back, Chad and Brichelle are up front. They're in direct communications with the EM techs. I mean, we have everything in place. We have a very rapid response with remote personnel, with radio communications to deal with, because once an accident happens, then yes, exactly what you're saying, you need to make decisions to react as quickly as possible. And we do that. Like, we have both parts. We've got the policy, the OSHA stuff to maintain that 365 days of no incidents, and then we also have the emergency response in place. And I'm not saying we couldn't do better in both of those areas, but we've really addressed that. And I think, yeah, basically the safety engineer position, and then go on to everything. We built these flagging towers. Brett is continuously resurfacing the track for a safe track. Like, I think that we're doing great, but not saying we couldn't do better. But I think we're basically all on the same page. So.
Now, what about? Do you think this would be helpful? That me included, and we've got we've got a fireman that's in the club, and we've got several first responders. What if we helped to get people, or had incentives or something for people to be a first responder, and then place them throughout the track?
Great idea.
Almost like our own little asterisk crew,
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of things that we're already thinking that and reasons that we pick people and different things to be club members that we don't say. And you're really
Right.
onto something there. That's something that's already kind of been thought through. Another thing on that is, what do we do? If you're a club member, what do you have to do? You have to be part of putting on the races. You have to be either flagging, you have to be
Right.
working the start, you have to be. Why is that? Because we're all racers. We know what needs to happen. We have experience. We're not just getting somebody off the street and then saying, hey, go wave a yellow flag.
Yeah.
So then when we do get the people that maybe haven't ever flagged a motocross race before, and then we make sure they go through their training. They're being
Yep.
trained from somebody that this has been a lifetime sport for them. When Aaron goes through something
It's true.
and starts training people, it's not like he's just saying, oh, get out there and somebody goes down, wave your flag. No,
Yeah.
there's a science to every reason,
Yeah.
everything that they do. And again, we're not doing everything right, but that's our approach. And again, that comes down to the culture. So that's why we always try to make a Gypsy member, you have to work the events so that we have that
Yep.
quality of people putting it on that, number one, have a passion for the sport, number two, have experience in the sport, and make the right decisions and understand why they're making that decision. Go ahead, Aaron.
What's funny about that, though, too, and I really thought about that a lot this summer, or basically at the end of the summer, because I have a way about me, like, I think I'm great. Like, I've managed a ton of people. I think people like working for me, but when something's going differently than I want it to go, I don't pull any punches. And I thought about that with a couple of our flaggers this summer. I didn't really chew their butt, but I was really forthright about, stop doing that. This is what you need to do. And it was funny because we had a few that didn't work well for it, but I think by and large it worked really good because, and I thought about why is that? Well, because granted, we started out with great volunteers, but by the end of the summer, every one of our flaggers was absolutely a pro at their job.
Right.
And I think that feels good. Like, that's why they wanted to do it in the first place, is they want to be a part of something good and they want to be good at it. And in a way, I think that just the way that, and maybe that's another culture shift, is like, why do every club, oh, we can't get any help? And it's like, at the Gypsies, like, I love being a part of the Gypsies because it's just a really good energy, and we know we're good. Like, I want to be a part of something that works well.
It's that excellence. You're working towards excellence. And, I know we get criticism from people on all the things you could do better. And trust me, we know it. We know it. We want to do better. There you go.
You want that cup, don't you?
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. But we want to do better. And, that, I think that is the culture with our club. It's not like, we're just here and, we're going to put on a race. It's like, no, we want everything to get better. We want, from from the grounds to the dirt to the equipment to the experience to the safety to every aspect of it. That's kind of the pride that we take and try to build into the culture of our club. So go ahead, Aaron. I cut you off.
And even in the view of all this concern for we're losing our sport, which I'm worried. I'm very worried. I'm not worried about pro motocross and television. That's going to go on. That's successful, or they're making a lot of money. It's fine. I'm worried about us, the guys that the true amateur motocross racers, or whatever you want to call it, local pros and AMs, right? But then again, it's just a problem. It has a solution, and I think that with what's happened with the Gypsies, can't we just take this? And not to say we need to go out and tell every other track what to do, but if we can cooperate with other tracks, we might learn from them and they learn from us, and then we might be able to solve the insurance problem, which is really looming, right?
That's definitely looming. I mean, that's.
But
good.
Without the amateur racers and the privately owned tracks, there will be no professional racers.
Yep.
I would say, historically.
So you would think that the OEMs would step up and go, you know what? This is our lifeblood here, and we need to step in and try to help out with this.
So there's a few things that add up to that make that. I agree with the logic there, but there's a few things been happening. So dirt bike sales are going down and continue to go down. But dirt bike sales generally don't make, especially motorbikes, they don't make any money. They make money off the street bikes, water, jet skis, quads. They make money off those because if you like Eli Tomac, then you're going to go buy a Duke. You know what I'm saying? That's where they make the money. So they don't really need us. The money we're paying for our dirt bikes is not making them money.
Well, it's got to be, or they wouldn't be making them. I mean, they're in the business for profit. Harley's having the same issue. Is their riders are aging out, and there's not people to fill back in to the people that's aging out. And I think it's more of a culture. I don't think it's got anything to do with motorcycles. A lot of it is, like with off-road bikes, is a lot of the off-road, the woods and the trails and stuff. That's where we all start. And it's drying up. I know down south, it's drying up. I mean, where I used to ride is malls and strip malls and subdivisions.
Well, it's definitely a difference in the culture between us. That's kind of what I was getting at, was us in Europe. I mean, they're a motorcycle culture. South America's a motorcycle culture. It's transportation. Here, we look at it more as a luxury in a lot of cases, and we have changed our culture that way. There's no doubt.
But I don't feel like off-road bikes, people age out as much because, case in point, a buddy of mine, he's 68. He called me the other day. He said, "Hey, Chip, I'm going to get a trail bike. Can you come over and help me look at it? I don't know anything about him. He used to ride when he was a teenager, but he wants to get back into it, trail riding." So I went and he ended up buying a trail bike. But, so the love and the passion's still there. But, is it a generational thing? Is it our generation that grew up riding them and trail riding and, riding out in the field?
Well, we didn't have
we
cell
still have that
phones
passion.
And the video games sucked. And, and thank God I grew up in that generation because,
Oh, yeah.
I do think there's definitely an element of that because, my God, being a dirt biker in the late 70s and early 80s, it was unreal.
It was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We would ride right in town. We would ride the dike right through town. I Gray Bear ski. I rode up and down everywhere out there. We used to unload at the Missouri River. I tell you what, you want to talk sand whoops? The river was back down near Vermilion or Elk Point, and you would ride sand whoops that were a quarter mile long.
Wow.
And they just get deeper and deeper. And then tracks. I raced the South Dakota Series. We raced every weekend, and then we could just races over the border in Minnesota. There was just tracks everywhere. So it was. I think part of it is who we were, and it was the opposite of. And then now we're just romantically speaking.
We're those old guys that people are laughing at.
But it was the opposite. Honestly, the wealth was not that big a deal, but certainly dirt bikers were not wealthy kids going to college.
No.
It was exactly the opposite. Just a bunch of grease monkeys, and there's that. I could talk about that all day, and there is that. But I do think, like, if you just kind of look at it, I mean, why would the manufacturers let this go on when that's their lifeblood? My belief is, and I'm basically just guessing, is that no, they make their money on the street bikes, win on Sunday, sell on Monday kind of deal. But the question of is dirt biking growing or decreasing? Like, there's no question. Like you said, the off-road riding areas are going away. The tracks, like I said, I'd say 10 to 15 years, we've gone from 15 or 20 tracks in this state to 2. And every state has the same story.
Yeah, but do you think a lot of that is because it's not profitable?
Yeah, and you're bringing...
go ahead.
You're going right. This is where I was going to go before we got off on this. And this is a good segue, because that's really what it comes down to. You know, I kind of alluded to that on the ski pass and what it cost. And, you know, let's just take motocross, for example. You know, everybody thinks that they're paying way too much to come to a race. And again, that's one of those things where we just haven't educated people, because they have no idea what it costs. All they know is it cost them $100 to race, let's say. By the time they got their family and they're paid at the gate and signed up, it cost them $100. Let's just use that for round numbers. It's probably less than that. In some cases, it's more. But if there's 100, it's about $100, and let's say you have 200 people. Let's just use that number, just because it's easy. Hopefully you have more than that, but let's say you have 200 people. You know, that's $20,000. A lot of people would say, wow, they're making bank. You know, that doesn't even begin to make you profitable. I mean, if you have a decent motocross track area in a decent place, you got $1 million in land at least. That's just the nature of that's what it's going to cost you. It might be a little bit less, but that's what it's going to cost you to have a big enough place. Now, yeah, you could have a place out in the middle of nowhere that you could get for a little bit less than that, but not a lot less. Then you've got your equipment investment. Let's say that you have total junk. You're still going to have 10 grand in it, just in your equipment, just to kind of get by. And then you hope it runs and all that kind of thing. Then you get your insurance. Well, you're talking 20 grand to have some races that year. And now there's a whole lot of other costs that I'm leaving out of there, but this is where I really wanted to go with this. People always say you need to have more flaggers. And now if that other track had 46 flaggers, if that's true, the one that's getting sued, if that's true, and that's not enough, if that's going to become the norm, that's not enough. And again, I don't know all the details, but let's say that you don't have enough flaggers. To me, that's going to be one of the mandates. We're going to have more flaggers. And again, that's harder than people realize. If you're from the outside of the motocross track, you don't realize how hard it is to get good quality people that are going to show up, care about it. Let's say that you pay your flaggers $100 a day. It's really not enough for what they do. If you have 46 flaggers and you paid them $100 a piece, that's $4,600 right there. So you can just see how those numbers don't really add up. It's not profitable whatsoever. So there is only really one solution. And sad to say this, but I hate to break it to everybody, but prices are going to have to go up. And that's one of the things that we haven't been bashful about, but at the same time we haven't gouged anybody. But we have raised prices where maybe some other places haven't, just because, now that's not nationally. If you look nationally, we're cheap. But if you look in our area, we're maybe not as inexpensive as, say, North Dakota or some of those places. I used to be on the board of the SDMA when we restarted it again. All the tracks were the board members, and so we met once a month, And when we kind of talked over what does it take to make this, financially, we weren't even necessarily saying profitable, but what do we need to have to make sure we can do it again next year and to keep the incentives. And it worked back then. We decided we were going to make motocross affordable. And when we decided we were going to make motocross affordable, I wasn't part of that, but when that was the end thing, what we did is we killed our tracks. You basically, the people that were putting on races, you took every incentive away from them. Plus, now they're also at risk. They could get sued. They could be named in a lawsuit and lose their house. They could lose their business. They could lose whatever because they loved the sport and they were trying to do something for other people. And, so then people started looking at it saying, wait, that doesn't make sense. So anyway, all that being said, one of the things that's going to happen with this sport is prices are going to have to go up. One of the things that we're going to have to consider is an additional flagger fee. And that will answer, or be part of the solution for getting more flaggers, and also maybe raising the price that we pay flaggers as well, for incentive to get good people. And, if anybody's hired anybody, it's hard to get people to work a regular job, let alone to come stand out in 90-degree weather and have dust coming by them and, whatever. And so, there's a lot of things there that we're going to have to be addressing, and it's going to come down to money.
I said, do you think it would be more well received if you break it down to people like you just broke it down to us?
I think
like they're like, hey, your little Johnny's going to be a lot safer because we got extra flaggers out here. We got this, we got that, all for everybody's safety and convenience and to run the bet. I mean, I see some of the haulers and stuff that are pulling in and out of there with, an 8-year-old kid with a, $300,000 diesel hauler. Obviously money's not the issue, So, I mean, and if you're somebody that's maybe, having a little more trouble affording it, it would make it a lot easier pill to swallow knowing this is what it's going for. It's not just going into, some fat cat's pocket. You know what I mean?
I do, and I think that's part of the, that being in the middle of the road thing, that education part, letting those parents that don't necessarily know, because, quite honestly, not always, but a lot of times those parents that have all those things, and that's how they motocross, I mean, they're just barely making it because that's how they've seen everybody else doing it. I remember the days when everybody showed up with their pickup and maybe a trailer, but their pickup, a pop-up, and the bikes were in the back of the pickup. And I'm not saying that that's the only way you can race, and you're wrong if you don't do that, but it's much more affordable. And it's also one of those things that's sustainable. So often I see the people that pass through the sport because mom and dad get involved in the sport and they see that this other kid that's fast has 65s that they pull out of the trailer, and they pulled it with a $100,000 pickup, and they're pulling a $100,000 toy hauler, and they figure that's how you have to motocross. And quite honestly, more often than not, those are the people that are passing through the sport. I hate to say that because I know there's a lot that don't. So everybody, when you hear that, I'm not picking on you, but I hate to say it. I've seen that happen so many times with this sport. And that's, there's so many education things that I think we're going to have to start working on from the ground up, with people on how you get involved in the sport and why you as a parent should learn to ride. Well, you as a parent need to ride with your kids. You probably need to start learning to motocross if you haven't motocrossed, because you have to understand as a parent when your son comes or your daughter comes off the track and they had a bad day, how you talk to that pilot, how you talk to that person as their coach, and you speak into their lives and you keep them in the sport. And you actually, we saw one thing this year, a parent, the kid got second or something like that, and the parent just blew up on this kid in front of everybody, and it was one of the hardest things to watch. And I'll be the first person to say, I was tough on Seth. There was a time we went to Worland and he got the biggest hole shot and then crashed, and we came off. I was like, why'd we even come? You know, I felt bad about saying it, but it was one of those things that I knew Seth well
Yeah.
enough, and it was one of those things that had to be said. Because, you know, with Seth, I understood him well enough that it had to be that thing. He had to think through, why did we come? So
Right.
I understand the emotion, but most of the time we're seeing the parents live it through their kids, and that cannot happen. That absolutely cannot happen. And that's, you know, the education part is going to have to start coming from the tracks to those parents. And, you know, so there's going to have to be some things that we're going to figure out how we're going to do that.
No, that's
I think
great
though, that
information.
does starts with structure. You know what I mean? Like everything we do as a track. I mean, it's not all perfect, but I mean, there's a bunch of us that are doing it because we love it and we're trying to make it better. And there's a lot of discipline and a lot of work. And then I think we do have great examples. And actually, I'll take Seth as an example. When he was, you know, he was in that era where he was super fast, and he was also real responsible and hardworking and polite and took ownership for what he did. And we had a bunch of young riders around that absorbed that. And you know who I'm talking about. Like
Right.
they all benefited from the culture of the track. And yeah, if we conduct ourselves responsibly and morally as leaders of the track, and we develop riders like that, like it should be a beneficial. And we've all, you know, any youth sport should be like that, right?
Right.
If they're playing baseball and it's a good organization with good people, they're going to benefit.
Amen. That's
Great.
the biggest thing that I think we're missing in motocross in this day and age is that integrity, that heart, the things that are the reason that, you know, as kids we're in all those other sports that if we have good coaches, they impart into our lives. And I think that's the one thing that the motocross world could do a whole lot better job of